For 30 years, Clarence Carter worked inside America's public assistance system under two presidents, four governors, and a mayor. He personally transformed Washington, D.C.'s homeless program, and after 3 decades on the inside, he came to an uncomfortable conclusion. The system designed to lift people out of poverty often keeps people there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty podcast network. Great to have you with me. I got an awesome guest for you lined up today. We're going to be talking about something that we really haven't talked about before. That is the safety net. And our guest today, Clarence Carter, has some really interesting takes that I think this audience is going to be very interested in, and it comes from years and years of experience. I'll introduce him in a moment. Before I do that, I want to remind you about the sponsor of this program, and that is Jason Gagne's Good to Go Body program, which is a 90-day workout program. It's different than other workout programs where other workout programs throw you in the fire. They're extreme. All of a sudden you're doing 30, 40, 50-minute workouts and you're exhausted and you're dying and you're sore. Jason's program builds from the ground up. It starts with flexibility. It starts on the ground, getting you functional, growing up like a baby to a toddler to get that foundation in there to work out, gain strength, get strong, and by the end of the 90 days, you won't recognize yourself. You can get $100 off his workout program by using the link in this video or in the audio podcast in the description. Just copy and paste it, and you will get the $100 off. Okay, let's get to the guest for today's show. And today's guest is Commissioner Clarence H. Carter. He's a 30-year veteran of America's public assistance system, served under two presidents, four governors, and a mayor, including leading the transformation of DC's homeless services program. He's the author of Our Net Has Holes in It, which argues that America's safety net needs reimagining, not just more funding. Clarence, thank you so much for coming on the show.
John, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, great to have you here. And, first thing that comes to mind is you spent 30 years in public service. What did you love about it? What kept you there going back to it for those 30 years?
What I have loved the most about it is that it has afforded me an opportunity to serve one of my passions, and that is to help vulnerable members of our society be able to grow beyond the vulnerability that has them in a circumstance where they feel like they can't live out their own unique version of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And during that time, one of the things that is I think very noteworthy is the transformation of DC's homeless program. So could you kind of share what was broken there, what you got there, and what was changed?
So what was broken there was a system that focused on shelters, on having DC's homeless residents exist through a shelter system.
Mm-hmm.
And what Mayor Fenty wanted of us is to close that shelter system and move individuals into their own apartments. Okay. And so we set about systematically um, moving individuals from a very crowded and dysfunctional shelter system into apartments. And let me share one particular story
Sure.
that I think illuminates the effort. So we were in the process of a mass move from the largest men's shelter, and we had, again, had a very organized process. We would, after we had found these apartments and entered into inspections and leases with the landlords, we would then have the individuals that were going to be housed sign leases, we give them their keys, and then escort them to their new facility.
Mhm.
In this one particular instance, we had gotten to a backlog where we needed to have some of the process um, organized before we could actually move the gentleman out. And so they were congregating in a central space,
Mhm.
and it was I would say a little bit of discomfort. And so gentlemen that had already gotten their keys. And so I called them all together, and this was about 65 gentlemen. I called them all together into a main space, and I said, "Guys, what time is the do you have to be in the shelter in order to get a bed and a meal?"
Hmm.
And they said, "If you're not in by 7, can't get in." And I said, "Okay, so now tell me," and they call that intake. And I said, "Okay, so tell me what time is intake tomorrow?" And they all looked at me kind of quizzically.
Mm.
And I said, "Hold those keys up." And I said, "Those keys represent that intake tomorrow is whenever you choose it to be." Said, "That's freedom."
Mhm.
They all started to rattle their keys. Okay, the idea that they would have now, and again, now this was still district supported housing, but that they had the freedom to be able to come and go as they would choose.
Mhm.
And it's that kind of freedom, John, that we ultimately hope that our system of public supports can enable for every vulnerable member of our society.
Yeah, because with that freedom, I mean, it's a building block, right? I mean, you have that freedom to make decisions, which of course decisions can have positive, negative outcomes, but at least you have the opportunity to make those decisions, right?
Absolutely, and I go back to um, the, the book that I authored. Arnett has holes in it,
Mhm.
and we talk in the book about a shared vision, and that shared vision, and that means what is our overarching objective for our system that serves the vulnerable. And we posit that that shared vision should begin with the same vision of our founding fathers, where it was their intention to create a society that enabled the greatest degree of freedom for the citizenry while protecting for health, safety, and commerce. And so it stands to reason that every organ of that society ought to support that basic principle of freedom. And it is my argument that as currently constructed, our system doesn't support that base principle of freedom
Mhm.
because the way the system is designed and operated, it has many on ramps,
Yeah.
but no off ramps. And so we want to transform the system so it's intentional about doing what we call building capacity to reduce dependency.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get right into it here with the issues that you've uncovered through your experience, 30 years working within the system, and you've written a book about it. What are some of these different areas that actually provide this disincentive to work their way off of dependence?
So the first problem, John, and we literally just spoke about this. The first problem is has been with this system no overarching objective or intention.
Mm,
And any endeavor has to begin with the end in mind. What
yeah.
what what is it that is your intention?
Mm,
Well, the intention in the current system is to build a program that puts a band-aid on an aspect of the human condition. Okay. And so we have scores of those literally. In my book, I chronicle 114 programs that have evolved over time. And the emphasis has been on the creation of those programs, not the issue of human well-being or freedom.
mhm,
And so it's our principal argument that if we begin with this end in mind of helping our vulnerable neighbors grow beyond the vulnerability that they have to turn to their government for the most basic elements of life. If we begin with that objective, then you can go back and re-architect the system and ensure that every component part is dedicated to meeting that objective of growing people beyond.
mhm,
And then in that regard, we change how we measure the success of the system. We should measure success of the system by the day that that consumer can turn around and say thanks, but no thanks.
mhm,
Because my community, my government has come around me, helped me address the issues by which I feel trapped, and I got the baton of my life and I can run the rest of the race. But right now, John, the kinds of things that we measure are compliance issues. And let me
mhm,
give you a for instance, okay? One of these 114 programs, and it has been in the news an awful lot lately, is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, which most everybody knows is as the food stamp program. Okay, and the objective of the food stamp program is to ensure that economically vulnerable consumers can have some additional financial support to purchase healthy and nutritious food. Okay, now, John, as an administrator of that program, I get measured on three things. One, did I get the benefit to the consumer who was eligible to receive it? Because there's criteria. Okay.
mhm,
The second, did I get it to them in the right amount? And the third is, did I get it to them in the appropriate time frame? If I do those three things well, I have run a wonderful food stamp program and will get patted on the back by the federal government. Now, none of those measures ask, did we keep anybody from starving? Or did we help anybody not need food stamps next week, next month?
that's it. Yeah, yeah,
And, and, and
yeah,
so, and so an important part of our transformed vision is we want to measure the outcomes of growing people beyond the vulnerability, that has them need these most basic of supports.
Yeah. What you're saying makes complete sense. And, it reminds me of how a small business operates, how entrepreneurs operate. You set a goal, you set a target, that's your intent to get there. You set out some metrics so you can track it because what gets measured gets managed,
That's
right?
right.
And my question though is, so a lot of this has been handled by government, and the government is very bureaucratic, right?
That's right.
In many different ways. So is this a problem that you think can be solved by government, or do we need outside help from nonprofits and businesses and churches and things of that nature?
So John, I'm a fervent believer, and we established this very early on in the book, that we believe that government absolutely has a role to play in this issue of the 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 human condition.
Hmm.
My challenge to the system is, and um, I think it was President Reagan said it best. He said the nine most dangerous words in the English lexicon is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And the challenge is that as the size and scope of government has grown over the past 70 years or so, it has crowded out the rest of
Mm.
the society from being part of the problem solving. And so one of the things that we make clear in our book is that we have got to take a whole of society approach. This absolutely does require the community of faith, the private sector, philanthropy, education, all of those sectors coming together, just as what we see in American society is whenever there is tragedy or calamity, everybody runs to help, and they
Hmm.
bring whatever it is they have. They might bring a shovel or or a truck or a sandwich or a dollar or a smile, but it is woven into our DNA to help. Um,
Hmm.
and we want to bring that same kind of whole of society approach to the calamity of the human condition, if you would.
So, what do you think that partnership between the private sector, businesses, education, churches, what does that partnership between that sector and government look like? How do you kind of cast a vision on how that could work?
So the first is that government has to check some of its arrogance at the door and ask. And let me give you an example.
Mhm.
Um, a couple of years ago, in my current position, um, I reached out to the director of Governor Lee's Office of Faith and Community, and I said to him, um, in my vision of transforming the Tennessee safety net, I said, what my agency is good at is that we are good at transaction. I said, I can do the transaction of getting a benefit, good, or service to a vulnerable Tennessean. I said, but the truth is that vulnerable Tennessean doesn't only need transaction, they need relationship.
Mhm.
And I said, government is not in the business of relationship.
Yeah.
And I said, so could I ask you to bring together a group of faith leaders, okay, and the faith community transacts in relationship so that we could build a, um, a relationship where we are taking this dual purpose approach to growing capacity to reduce dependency. He brought together a group of faith leaders from all across Tennessee. And I had this very simple plea: can you help me? And they said, absolutely, tell us how. And so I use that story for the simple purpose of saying that if government will check its arrogance at the door and say to the rest of our society, this is a challenging problem for our society, and we need all hands on deck. Will you help? As long as government will define what the help looks like and provide its vast resources to support that, the country will run to this to help.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. My question though is because I mean, when we're talking about this, I'm nodding. I think the audience at home is nodding along. They're agreeing with you, but there's going to be opposition to this, right? Because it's change, and there are people who benefit from the current structure as it's set up today. Um, so who are or is there? I should ask. Do you believe there is a constituency, either politically, institutionally, that does benefit from the system staying broken as it operates today?
So, John, there are grifters in any human endeavor,
Mhm.
and the public safety net is no different. There are there are entities that make their living on the dysfunction of this system and the vulnerability of our citizenry. But here is my thinking: there's such a much more vast audience outside of the grifters. And this is the reason that I am so happy for this opportunity today. And we have been seeking other opportunities to have this discussion with John Q. Public, because there's a whole lot more John Q. Public than there is the operators of this system.
Mhm.
And while this is a massive system, John, I mentioned a few minutes ago that the federal government alone has authorized 114 separate programs. And those separate programs spend $1.49 trillion, just the federal government alone annually, every single year, 1.49 trillion. Okay. So it is a massive system. There are thousands and thousands of folks on the front lines that do this work, um, from the government every single day. And it is an absolutely massive bureaucracy. But there's a whole lot more of America outside of that bureaucracy.
Mhm.
And I believe in opportunities like you're presenting today, okay, to speak to that massive America and say that our intention to help people that are economically, socially, and developmentally vulnerable is flawed. And the dollars that you spend in this pursuit every year are not being optimized. I know that the rest of society will rally to that.
Mhm.
That's our objective.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like anything, in this world. If you're trying to start a movement to gain momentum, you have to sell the dream to people, right? And
That's right.
and paint the picture. And I think a part of that is, you know, giving an understanding of what this could look like. Maybe an example for someone coming into um, the system. How would you envision this to look? Say that if you were given the ability to reimagine the safety net, design it from scratch, and maybe this is too too particular of a question. I'm not
No,
sure,
not at
but
all.
how would it look like for a person maybe coming into it, and what kind of stakeholders would be involved, and what would their roles be?
So, um, John, it begins with engaging the consumer from a perspective of you have come to engage this system today because there is some vulnerability in your life that impedes you from making your way. We want to come alongside you and help you with that from a perspective of helping you to grow beyond it. Okay.
Mhm.
So we begin with sharing that objective with the consumer. Okay. And then we do a full battery of assessment with that consumer because that individual has broader challenges than the one program that they have presented for.
Mhm.
And so you would want to first understand that the challenges attendant to that consumer. And then you can reach back to an array of tools. And the tools then would be programs that you could stitch together to be able to take a comprehensive approach to the consumer. And you would also attach to the consumer a navigator. And this navigator would be it's like a coach, a mentor, a cheerleader. Okay. Someone that is dedicated to helping that consumer navigate the range of benefits, goods, and services
Mhm.
that will help them get to the other side.
Yeah. Not someone who's checking in on them, someone who's coming alongside them,
Coming
right?
alongside them. That's
Mhm.
exactly that's
Mm.
exactly right. And now let me give you a representative story that
Sure.
is that you can also find in my book. So we were working on welfare reform when I had this role in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I was working for Governor George Allen, and his objective was to transform the Virginia welfare system. And so we put forward an ambitious plan called the Virginia Initiative for Employment, Not Welfare. And what it would require is able bodied welfare recipients would be required to work for receipt of benefits. And now they had to be supported in that work, but they were required to work for receipt of benefits. We put that initiative in place, and there was, sort of much fanfare around it. And then about a year and a half into it, I asked my staff if they could put together a series of engagements for me around the state. I wanted to speak directly to consumers that had been affected by the reform. Okay. And in this one instance, this woman named Barbara, I was introduced to Barbara by her caseworker. And I said, Barbara, we've been doing this now for a year and a half, and I want to hear from those of you who have been impacted by this change. And please do me a favor, be brutally honest with me. Okay. And Barbara said, she said, Mr. Carter, when my caseworker told me I was going to have to go to work to get my welfare, he said, I was crushed. She said, I was in a fetal position for the longest time. She said, I hadn't worked in 14 years since the birth of my first child. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. And she said, I thought about maybe moving to another part of the state that didn't have this work requirement, because part of the design of the program was if that county's unemployment rate was at such a level then you wouldn't put the work requirement in place. But she
Mhm.
said, I laid around and I didn't do that until finally, my caseworker said, "Okay, now we've got to get about this whole work thing." And she said, "Well, now, okay, I, my oldest child is 14, and how are my children going to be taken care of?" And the caseworker said, "Well, we are required to provide you childcare if we're going to ask you to work. And so we've got dollars that will allow you to find and put your children in a healthy and safe childcare environment while you work." And then she said, "Well, okay, all right. How am I going to get back and forth to work? I got an old
Mhm.
beat up car that just runs sometime and sometime not." And my caseworker said, "Well, we can provide some support to help you fix your vehicle. That again is part of the legislation." And she said, "Okay." She said, "So finally, they helped me find a job, and I got a job at a convenience store." And she said, "Mr. Carter, do you know what I did with my first paycheck?" I said, "No, Barbara, I'm sorry, I don't." She said, "I took my children out for pizza." And she started to cry. She started to cry. The case worker started to cry. I started to cry. And she said, "I didn't think that I could do this,
Mm.
but I now know I will never be on welfare again because I can do this for myself and my family."
Mhm.
That's freedom. That's freedom.
Mm.
That's what we want for every vulnerable neighbor. That day that they know they got it, okay, and that they can live a life beyond the system of public supports.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's sort of in any decision that you make, a lot of people have a hard time making that first choice, and there's obstacles in the way. But being able to address those obstacles, transportation, childcare, that's it. That's it right there. And once you give someone that vision and they can see it, they can taste it, it's real. That's exactly what you need.
And John, that is so important. Okay, that consumer has to be able to see it.
Mhm.
Okay, and until the moment they can see it, it's just gibberish.
Mhm.
But the system, part of its job, has got to enable them to see it. Okay, to let them know that they are more than the vulnerability that they find themselves in.
Mhm.
And as you said, once an individual understands that, the light comes on, and again, they can take that baton and run that race for themselves. And when you have an opportunity and you do this work that I've done for 35 years, and you see that light come on, it's like everything, it's all of the
Mhm.
bureaucracy becomes worth it in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the big question, I think what we're talking about today, the average citizen out there listening is nodding along, they're agreeing.
Mhm.
But as things work in this country, there would have to be some action coming from Washington. And it's no secret we have a lot of division in Washington, and it doesn't. I don't see a future where that's going to change much. Is it possible to get bipartisan support? Is there an appetite right now for this structural reform that is needed to put into action what you're talking about nationwide?
And John, I believe that it is, and here's why. That this is not just my seeing um, the glass is half full. It has been my experience. So I have done this work in both. conservative and liberal administrations. And it has always been around these same principles that I'm sharing with you today. Okay. At the end of the day, if we begin with the notion of the vulnerable consumer and our objective to help them grow beyond the vulnerability, if we stay in that lane, then that will enable bipartisan support. Because here's the neat thing about this, okay? And I start in my book with this. America is the most generous nation ever known to humankind.
Mm-hmm.
This nation would give one the shirt off its very back. Okay. And we have manifestations of that very early on in the book. And so I say that to say, we want anybody, and I mean left, right, and center, we want anybody who's vulnerable to not be vulnerable. Okay. So it's a shared objective. We simply don't have a mechanism dedicated to achieving that. So if we focus on it is our objective to grow our vulnerable neighbors beyond that vulnerability, I believe that we can meet in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In that, I say often that our objective should be to strengthen America by strengthening Americans, because a society is no stronger than its people.
Mm-hmm.
And where we have huge segments of our population that are economically, socially, and developmentally vulnerable, that weakens our overall society. So it should be our collective objective to help as many folks grow beyond that vulnerability as possible. So I do believe that there's a place that we can meet, that where all of us can meet to achieve this most important objective.
Yeah, and I mean, we certainly, in order to get there, we need voices out there like yourself to lead the way. And I'm just curious to understand, and maybe this should have been the first question I asked you, but um, I'm glad I'm asking it now. You spent 30 years working within the system. You could have retired, gone off into the sunset, relaxed, kicked your feet up, but you're still working. You're probably doing your most important work now,
That's right.
based on the experience that you've had the last 30 years. So
Mhm.
what's driving you to continue?
So, John, this is the work that God put me on this earth for. Okay, that to help the vulnerable amongst us be able to move beyond that vulnerability and to fix the systems that are intended to achieve that objective. So I feel like my 30 plus years in the system has been, if you would, my time in the wilderness where I was actually being sharpened
Hmm.
for this part of the work. I had to learn. I had to understand what the system is and how it operates, intimately, not from a theoretical perspective, but from a real everyday. And that's what the 30 plus year journey has been all about. And now I'm in a place where I can take that learning and propose this transform vision. And John, an important part of that learning is to understand how to communicate this to John Q. Citizen.
Hmm.
Okay. This system is a massive black box. that no one outside of it, and quite frankly, most of the folks inside of it don't understand it. Okay. And while, again, it is our societal objective to help, we don't realize that the $1 trillion that we're spending every year is not meeting our objective. And so I have to be able to explain to John Q. Citizen, this is your desire. And you manifest your desire by the taxes that you pay that go into this massive system. Okay. Let me tell you how it doesn't work and how it can work.
Hmm.
So this is what keeps me fueled, and I will continue to be the Pied Piper of this work until I no longer have the ability to.
Well, we're thankful that you're deciding to put this effort in now, because I mean, I think it's obvious to the everyday citizen that the system is broken. We kind of look at Washington like, well, what are you going to do about it? And this hopefully we can build some momentum to change that. And that kind of leads into my next question. So the average listener listening right now, they're not a they're not a policymaker.
That's right.
What can they do? Is there anything they can do to be a part of the solution at the local level?
As I said a little while ago, that when there is tragedy or calamity in our society, everybody runs to help and they bring whatever it is they have to bring. And so my ask is understanding that this is a calamity. Everybody has to bring the thing that they have to bring, whether or not you could be a mentor, whether or not you could be, a foster parent, whether or not, you could teach somebody, whether or not you could, provide respite care in the child welfare space, on and on and on. There are literally there are as many ways to help as there are people that need help.
Mhm.
And so what I would ask of folks is to understand your blessing, and then how can you translate that blessing to someone else? Okay. And then further, what one of the things that government has to do in this regard is ask. It has got to say that this is a problem for all of us to come together and solve. And I think that one of the things, quite frankly, that government doesn't use well enough is its convening power around
Mhm.
issues like this. And John, if I could, as we round into the home stretch on this, I'd like to share a story if I could.
Oh yeah, please do.
And I'm pretty sure that almost all of your audience has seen at one time in their life the story of the Wizard of Oz. Okay,
Mhm.
and as the story goes, Dorothy and out with doing what children do, was riding her bike, and she fell and hit her head, um, and woke up in this magical land. Okay, and her only objective was to go back home. And so she went and she would ask folks, Can you help me get back to Kansas?" And everybody that she would meet would say, I don't know how to get back to Kansas. But if you go to Oz and ask the wizard is all powerful and almighty. The wizard can tell you how to get back home. And so Dorothy embarks upon this life's journey to find her way back home. And along the way, she meets other characters who are also looking for things. She meets the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow wants a brain. Okay, she meets uh, the Tin Man, and the Tin Man wants a heart, and she meets the Cowardly Lion, and he wants courage. And she says to each of them, "Look, um, I'm going to the wizard, going to Oz and the wizard, and ask for what I want. Come with me. You can ask for the things that you want too." And so again, they tarry on this life journey and with all of its trepidations. And finally, they get to this opulent, magnificent structure. And I consider this the structure of government. Okay. And they knock on the door, and the bureaucrat comes to the door and says, "It's lunchtime. Come back later." Okay. Well, finally, they get into this great hall and they hear this big booming voice and see this image. And they're trying to ask for the things they want to ask for, but they're frightened. And the little dog Toto pulls a curtain back, and they notice that all this sound and fury is nothing but a man who's got some pretty cool gadgets. And they're really, you know, put off or heartbroken. Say, "Oh, well, you're just a man."
Mhm.
And this just a man comes to the Scarecrow and he says, um, you really had everything that you needed. Okay. Um, and I'm just going to give you a token of that. So he gives him a degree. And the Scarecrow instantly understands I had knowledge all along. Okay. I actually helped design much of the trip. And then he goes to the Tin Man and he says, and he gives him a heart medallion. And the Tin Man realizes that he had rusted because he was crying. Okay. And then finally, he goes to the lion and gives him a crown and a scepter. And the lion has realized that he has courage because he had gone into the castle to help get Dorothy out of the castle, but she was held by the Wicked Witch. And so Dorothy, the only real character in this story, says, "Oh, I don't believe that you have anything in that bag for me." And he says, "No, but you guys have kind of blown this wizard gig. So I'm going to leave tomorrow. I'm going to go home and I'll take you with me. Big ceremony at noon tomorrow. I'll take you home with me." Well, as circumstance would happen, his contraption craps out and he can't, and he leaves without Dorothy. And she's crying. And her alter ego, the good witch, comes along and says to Dorothy, "You had the power to go home all along. All you had to do was to summon it." Now, I don't want to suggest that transforming this safety net or helping our vulnerable neighbors get over their vulnerability is as simple as clicking their heels 3 times and saying there's no place like home.
Mhm.
What I do want to suggest is the power is in us.
Mhm.
Okay. And so it's in each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And so we need to summon that power to transform our our safety net to serve those that are most vulnerable amongst us.
Thanks for sharing that. And that story reminds me of probably a month, maybe longer ago. Elon Musk had posted on X that this was when he had just gone public with SpaceX, and he was getting all kinds of pushback from people on the left for being a what is he, a trillionaire now? Is that
Right.
even
That's right.
that's crazy?
That-
Crazy to think that, but
That's right.
he doesn't need that much money and all this, and he had said that he would give whatever X amount of money it was, billions of dollars, to end world hunger if somebody could give him the plan.
That's right.
And that just I think that's important to point that out, that it's not an amount of money that is needed to end it. It is people. It is us. It is people who can come alongside to give the hand up. So it's not a dollar figure, and this is what people on the left and right get wrong, right?
And John, that is again one of my principal arguments in the book. We don't need more money. We don't need more programs.
Mhm.
We need a better mousetrap. Okay. And I have been blessed to navigate the system to understand how we can have that better mousetrap. So
Mhm.
we don't need more. We need more common sense.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Clarence. I wanna thank you for coming on the show. Before I let you go, can you tell people where they can get your book? Our net has holes in it. Any other work that you have, or if you wanna point people to a website or social media or anything like that.
So you can find the book on Amazon. Okay. Again, it is Our Net Has Holes in It, and by Clarence H. Carter. And we are currently working on a an entire um, endeavor around this, which we're not quite ready to launch yet, but it is it will be a a system to transform our safety net with website and all that sort. We are currently working on that
Mhm.
and will be prepared to launch in a couple of months.
Awesome. It's exciting stuff, and I really did enjoy this conversation. I wanna thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for coming on the show.
John, thanks so much, and to each and every one of your audience for listening to us today. Thanks so much. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Bye now.
Bye bye.
All right. Well, that is a wrap for today's show with Clarence H. Carter. I really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully, you did too. Hopefully, it gave you a new, fresh view on how we can reimagine the safety net. I know it's making me think a lot about things that maybe I could do locally to help out. I want to encourage you, if you like this episode, if you like this show, if you like what we do here on Lions of Liberty and on Finding Freedom, please do be sure to rate and review the show. Be sure you're subscribed wherever you're watching and listening. All of that helps. And if you really want to help us out and you want to get more content and access to the hosts here at Lions of Liberty, please do consider joining us on Patreon or Locals. With that said, I will see you all next week with another great interview. In the meantime, keep going.